Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today, our industry session. My name's Adrian Collette. I'm CEO of the Australia Council for the Arts, soon to be Creative Australia. We'll get to that in a minute. In welcoming you, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I'm on Wurundjeri country and pay my respects to elders past, present and current, and my wonderful First Nations colleagues at the Australia Council itself, and acknowledge the elders of the many and various lands. I believe there are about 800 people on this call. So thank you for supporting it, and we really look forward to hearing from you now or as we consult in the standing up of Writers Australia. I'd like to thank also our Auslan interpreters, Yasmin Dundachi and Carly Balako, who will be joining us and doing their sterling work today. And I'd also like to welcome in particular my colleague from the Australia Council, Winona Byrne, who's head of practice for literature, and Patricia RJ, who is our head of practice for First Nations arts and culture. Joining me in this session will be the Executive Director for First Nations Arts and Culture at the Australia Council, Francesca Cubillo, and also I'm delighted that we have Dr. Stephen Arnott, Deputy Secretary of Creative Economy and the Arts, with whom we work very, very closely. So thank you for joining us on this session on the establishment of Writers Australia. I'm sure that you will have many questions about the policy and the role of the Australia Council as it transforms into Creative Australia. I encourage you to start putting your questions into the Q&A function, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. The intention of this exercise is we hear from as many people as we can, and we'll find other ways of doing that over the next 6 months. The Australia Council's heads of practice and colleagues across the Council have been sharing the initial reaction to the National Cultural Policy, and two common themes are emerging for us already. I think the nice thing we're hearing, and the Minister is hearing, is just how inclusive the policy is, and how many people feel their submissions were listened to and can see themselves reflected in some of the priorities of the policy. I'd like to congratulate and acknowledge all of you who have put significant time into putting forward submissions and for the advocacy that you've done, which has helped shape this policy. We had well over 1,200 such submissions inform our final work. The second message that we've heard is that the devil will be in the detail. Certainly there is much to unpack in the policy and much work to do in bringing it to life. I and my colleagues at the Australia Council are committed to engaging and listening to your ideas and feedback as we plan for the implementation. As you know, the National Cultural Policy sets out the Australian government's vision of a place for every story, a story for every place. In becoming Creative Australia, the Australia Council will be a bigger and bolder champion and investor in Australian arts and creativity. If you joined the All of Sector briefing we held last week, you will have heard me say that this will not be business as usual for the Council. And I want to stress this point again with you today. A modern Creative Australia will become a creative investment and development agency with a stronger focus on building public and private partnerships for maximum impact, and concentrate also on how we can invest in the sustainability of the industry. Australia is one of the most culturally diverse countries on earth. Telling our stories is vital to social cohesion and well-being. As the Australia Council celebrates 50 years of supporting First Nations arts and culture, we are delighted that First Nations is first within the National Cultural Policy, and I'm sure Francesca will talk to that very soon. Our core strategic value, creativity connects us, which arose from our 2019 strategy, has never been more relevant. It has informed the policy advice that we have given to previous and current governments. The strategy was disrupted, of course, by the outbreak of the pandemic, but we can now build on the best of it in developing our new corporate plan. Change will not occur overnight, as you will have seen in reading the plan. The government will stage the budget allocation, allowing us time to plan and consult as we transform to Creative Australia, and importantly, it gives us time to establish Writers Australia. Writers Australia will be set up with a high degree of autonomy within Creative Australia, informed directly by writers and industry expertise. It will advise on how best to invest, supporting the creation, publication, promotion, and sharing of Australian stories. Informed by this significant targeted investment, Writers Australia will nurture the next generation of readers also to sustain and grow the market for Australian books. Additionally, through the new investment we will receive for works of scale, we will look to bring together the public and commercial sectors to invest in Australian stories and develop the impact of these nationally and internationally. The return of the cuts, the funding cuts made to the Australia Council's budget over the financial years 2014 to 2016 is really important also. It will enable us to increase the impact of our existing programs, like our multi-year investment for organisations, with priority given to increasing the success rate so that more organisations, more artists receive investment. We will also be looking across all our programs at how we can deliver greater outcomes for communities of interest, such as youth and community arts. I also want to highlight the State of Culture report, which we will be responsible for. Produced every 3 years, it will evaluate the impact of creative and cultural investment and lay the groundwork for the review of the cultural policy every 5 years. Think the State of Environment report as a comparator. This is important work in itself. It is also strategically very important to the longevity of a whole of government policy. There's a lot of work to do in unpacking the detail of our new responsibilities and functions, including how they will operate and integrate alongside the work we already do. Rest assured that we will welcome your input. I would love to hear your first impressions of the policy and your feedback on how Writers Australia should focus and deliver on its objectives, which are to support writers and illustrators to create new works, invest in a network of key organisations delivering public value for Australians, develop national industry initiatives and international markets to maximise exposure and access to global markets, and establish a National Poet Laureate to promote poetry and mentor upcoming poets, developing poets. I have two questions in particular that we would really like to hear your views on. Given the role of Writers Australia that has been set out in the government's national cultural policy, what are the top 2 priorities that Writers Australia should focus on? What are the measures of success you want to have in place when Writers Australia is evaluated in 2026 to inform the next cultural policy? So please keep adding your questions and comments to the Q&A. You can also send your views, both now and in future, to ncp@australiacouncil.gov.au, ncp@australiacouncil.gov.au. I'd now like to invite my colleague, Francesca Cubillo, to talk about First Nations First. Francesca, over to you.
Thank you, Adrian, and it's wonderful to be joining you from the unceded and unsurrendered lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I want to particularly acknowledge the First Nation people who are joining us online today, and for those remarkable leaders who have gone before to allow us to be at this important place in history. For me, I am so excited to be able to be working within the Australia Council, working to find ways to uplift, celebrate, and really acknowledge and invest in our First Nation storytellers. Of course, storytelling has been alive and well across this continent since time immemorial. And to think that as a remarkable First Nation culture on this continent, 75 years of flourishing, of caring for country, caring for each other, and caring for our elders and our ancestors, and preparing space for that next generation. It is very much a case that storytelling has been here since time immemorial. And of course, we have had our authors, we have had our audiences, and we have had those actors who have activated those stories so that many can share. This policy recognises the centrality of First Nation peoples, our arts and culture, and it recognises it as the first pillar in the policy. And when you think about the Australia Council, you must think about the establishment of the Aboriginal Arts Board. And as we mark this important 50-year anniversary since the establishment of First Nations arts and culture, we must welcome this important recommitment to self-determination as a next step in strengthening First Nations peoples, our arts and culture. Within the policy, you will see references to the establishment of a First Nations-led board. This board will be responsible to invest in, create, and produce First Nation works of scales with priorities and funding determined by First Nation leaders. This, of course, will begin from the 1st of July 2024. Identified within this policy will be also the development of a First Nation creative workforce development strategy, and this will promote best practice cultural protocols, self-determination, and cultural safety training across arts and cultural organisations, non-Indigenous, as well as supporting our First Nations small to medium organisations and empowering them as those wonderful engine rooms that are all about developing our First Nation storytellers and our creatives. Between now and the 1st of July, the First Nation Arts and Culture Strategy Panel will continue its important work in providing advice, direction, insights and support to us at Council. They play a crucial role in providing us with sector advice, but they are also the avenues for us to ensure information gets out to the sector. And it is through the First Nation Arts and Culture Strategy Panel, as well as additional consultation around the country, that will set the foundations for the development of this First Nation-led board, as well as the investment framework across Creative Australia, as we empower and ensure First Nation people are at the forefront in terms of determining the stories that are told, determining who is working within the industries and how we might share this wonderful expertise across the broader audience within Australia. It is wonderful to begin this journey with you. And of course, we are very, very keen to hear your insights. So this conversation, this presentation will be the start of many more conversations between now and the 1st of July 2024. So I know there are many questions coming through and we look forward to responding to those, but equally we look forward to talking face to face with you, be it in remote regions, in those towns or in the cities. This will certainly occur over the next 12 months. We're looking forward to building this remarkable work, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. I'll hand back to you, Adrian.
Thank you very much indeed, Francesca. And perhaps now I can ask our colleague Stephen Arnott if you'd like to say something, Stephen.
Thank you, Adrian. Yes, indeed. I'm coming to you from the lands of the Ngunnawal people here in our beautiful national capital, and I pay respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations people that are joining us today. I'm the sort of deputy secretary that looks after the arts for the Commonwealth Government, and I work closely with Minister Burke and his office to develop the policy, which we launched last Monday, which seems like quite a while away. Really, the message I want to send today is that we really had an amazing level of engagement and consultation throughout the short period that we had to develop the policy, and we just received so much constructive feedback and ideas and so on, many of which you will see reflected in the policy. And what we want to do is continue on in that spirit of consultation and close engagement as we implement the policy and work out the finer details of how we can make the most of all of its initiatives and the new money that's coming with it. So just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to be on the call today. Be assured, as Francesca said, that we will continue to work with you as we iron out the details. The Australia Council will obviously be leading the consultation on the Creative Australia initiatives, and this is just the start of that conversation. So thanks to Adrian and Francesca for inviting me along, and I look forward to seeing what questions we have to answer. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you, Stephen. We've got a few questions coming through, I have to say, and I'm going to have to try and moderate them as well as probably answer a number of them, so bear with me. Can I just please stress too, this is, as we said, a beginning, not an end, and we're really keen to hear what your top 2 or 3 priorities are. So as well as asking questions, if you think there are things that are vital to the sustainability of writing and the industry, please start bombarding us with your priorities. I like this one. I'm going to ask it first up because it's quite close to my heart. Why Writers Australia and not Writing Australia? I'm not surprised at all that we've been asked this question, Stephen. I think we should look into it. We've got time before legislation, but it's a perfectly good question. But that's probably as far as my answer should go.
Indeed.
There's one here about, will the Australia Council's existing programs fit within Writers Australia? Obviously someone who knows our business well. My answer to that is that we will continue all our multi-year funding and individual and project grants for writers through our current funding programs. It's really important to note that the Minister was keen that all the funding we've got is additional, and he wanted to see our programs continue, as indeed we do. We might do some fine-tuning over time, but clearly the intent of this is to have discrete investment, dedicated investment into writing and into the literature. So we're not going to offset any of our current programs against the new money. We can be quite categorical about that comes our way. The sole intention of this is to increase the level of dedicated strategic funding into writing, into literature. So we will respect that as we stand this up, absolutely. And I think many of you will know that the Minister's also made his intention pretty clear about the board or panel that will be set up around Writing Australia, that it will be a mix of industry leaders and of writers themselves. So before we invest $1 of these precious funds, we will be taking the best possible industry advice we can. on how we do it to build the capacity and skills of the industry over time. Does playwriting sit within Writers Australia? Certainly. One of the submissions describe writing as the kind of primary industry of the arts for all the manifest reasons, the way it fuels so much else that is done through writing, through drama, through film. So yes, playwriting will definitely be sitting in Writing Australia. Another one here, could I clarify works of scale? Do you want to do this, Stephen, or shall I have a crack at it?
You have a crack and I'll see if I've got anything to add.
I really welcome this. This is a dedicated fund. Remember, it's the telling of Australian stories in all their forms, which have potential to have great impact both nationally and very often internationally. So it could be through adaptation, it could be from script to stage to screen, and it's an invitation for, and this is very important, remembering that writers and artists are and will remain at the centre of what we do, but we have an opportunity here to really work to co-invest with the commercial sector around the telling of Australian stories. So I'm particularly keen that we use this fund to ensure that we kind of get more investment, leverage our public investment to attract commercial investment around the telling of Australian stories. We've had so many examples of writing that has travelled and been adapted for the international market. Now we get a chance to do it much more systematically. And it's a new departure for the Australia Council, which I think is pretty exciting.
And I would just quickly add, Adrian, that there is also a dedicated First Nations-led works of scale investment. Not to say that First Nations people can't participate in the main one, but there is a dedicated First Nations one to just try and make sure that First Nations people have the kind of financial clout to be able to lead on these projects rather than just participate. So we've got two works of scale elements to the Creative Australia proposals.
And Adrian, if I can also add, in regards to First Nation investment for our storytellers is that it is investment for those remarkable individuals who are able to create and capture those stories, but equally those small to medium organizations that are First Nation led. They may be small publishing First Nation organizations, they may be First Nation language centers, they may be First Nations editing, small editing companies. Building this workforce and building works of scale means that from a First Nations-led perspective, our investment not only builds that remarkable storytelling deliverable, be it through books, plays, poetry, but equally that it builds the industry that sits around it. And in the same way that we've seen investment in the visual arts, First Nation visual arts, which has across the last 30 years produced remarkable results. What we're seeing now under this new policy is thinking about the First Nation people who want to work in the industry that sits around the individual creatives, be they small to medium organizations or playwrights and small theatre companies, taking that small kernel of an idea and then realizing it from, and it might be realizing a work of scale where that film is recorded on country and performed on country, where audiences from the metropolitan areas actually come to a remote region to see these remarkable epic operas of scale. So I think we're excited that we are thinking above and beyond the current parameters that determine what is deliverable, what will be delivered. And of course, we're keen to hear from First Nation storytellers in terms of the entire diversity of what that might look like.
Thank you, Francesca. I'm getting, I invited comments and I'm getting a few here. A comment was a key priority. One priority must be to get Australian publishers to put out literary fiction. So I'm sure there are many publishers on this call who might like to respond to that. But also a comment on supporting national frameworks like the National Writers Centre, and of course to fund writers to create new works. The question of course is to work with all parts of the industry to work out how we do those things best, how we make the funding commitments to do those things best. What else have we got coming through here? Someone has asked whether new artist residencies, in Australian World Heritage Sites, will this be open to writers? I might throw that to you, Stephen, but I'm sure it will be.
I would anticipate it would be art form agnostic, Adrian.
And a question here, which, like a number, I can't answer categorically, but it is to talk about the plans for fellowships. I think within the work we did on the policy, the impact of fellowships is really understood. So I think I can't imagine a Writing Australia that doesn't put an emphasis and a priority of creating more fellowships. We have heard over and over again from some of our most distinguished and successful writers just how important that has been in the building of their careers. So we have made a start. This is really introductory. We've got about 40 questions that have come through, which is actually a great starting point for our thinking, but it is only a beginning. In the way the budget flows, Writing Australia will be, see, I'm using the word Writing Australia, Steve. Writing Australia will be established in 2025. So we've got some time to do the consultation that we will do. Again, let me stress that the advice that will be put around this will certainly be from artists, but also from all parts of the industry, so we can start joining those dots and see how public investment can stimulate greater investment in the industry. And as always, the question of how we establish not just markets nationally, but internationally, how we can invest in that process further is a really critical one and will be a critical one for us. So thank you all. I've got a call time now on the questions, but as I say, we've got a number of them now to help start shaping our thinking.
Have I got just 1 second to respond to one more question, Adrian? Sorry to be annoying.
Yeah, go for it.
I just noticed someone was asking about how Writers Australia will be established and what the governance structure will be. And you know, that does need to be worked out, but it needs to be worked out in consultation. We really want people to have a say about that. I don't think it's the intention to go back to the kind of the original art form board structure, but we haven't formed our final views about how it would best operate. So I think that should be included in part of the discussions going forward. What we do know is that we're very keen to have artists and publishers involved in that structure.
Thank you, Stephen. And as the cultural policy itself makes clear, over its overarching investment, we have made a beginning. You know, this is in very constrained fiscal times. This is really significant investment across the board. And for the first time, we have a dedicated fund to build writing and literature in this country. So our view is we set this up well, we get it right. It'll be part of the evaluation we do before the iteration of the next cultural policy. but just the fact that the most underfunded art form now has its dedicated funding stream, I think is a moment of real excitement for us. So we'll be working hard on it. Thank you all for joining us. Look forward to talking to many of you over the weeks and months ahead. And thank you to my colleagues for joining us also. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.